Good evening. Our top story. The stage is set for a pivotal meeting of European leaders in Salzburg in Austria as EU ministers prepare to once again discuss Brexit. With the threat of a no-deal scenario looming, both sides are expected to make real efforts in preparing the foundations for an agreement. Well, this evening, the Irish have made it clear that the UK needs to step up its negotiations on the Irish border so that the UK and the EU can move towards a deal by the end of next month. Well, the EU's chief negotiator has been briefing the press tonight. Let's go straight to Aarti, Shankar, our policy analyst with the think tank Open Europe. Hello to you, Aarti. So he has been talking to the press at the moment, saying things like the moment of truth is approaching ahead of that vital summit in October. What do you make of that, and how do you see this panning out?
Yeah, so I think Michel Barnier's statement on the whole has not been very unexpected. He said many of the things that we've heard the EU and member states and indeed UK negotiators say to date. We are the vast majority of the way there to concluding the withdrawal agreement. The main outstanding obstacle now, as you say, is a mutually acceptable version of the Irish backstop. Michel Barnier also talked about the moment of truth being October. That's quite interesting. The October European Council summit, when EU leaders are expected to meet, was intended to be the pivotal moment at which a deal should be reached in order to be ratified in time. That moment, that October moment, looks like it has slipped actually to November at this point. But what the EU seems to be signalling here is that real significant progress is needed by October.
Another key issue that he has already mentioned in that little press conference that he held in Brussels was the Ireland border issue, a key sticking point, isn't it? There are suggestions that the EU may be moving and shifting in its position. What do you think they'll do?
Yes, so reports have suggested that what the EU Commission is coming up with now are amendments to its backstop to make it more politically palatable to the UK. So what we're hearing are that what Michel Barnier wants to do, in his own words, is to de-dramatise the idea of an Irish sea border between Northern Ireland and Great Britain. And they're talking about conducting checks at UK ports or at UK businesses, not on the Northern Ireland side, but on the Great British side. They're suggesting that perhaps goods travelling on ferries from Great Britain to the island of Ireland could have checks undergone on these ferries rather than at the destination site in Ireland or Northern Ireland. These are all kind of slight adjustments, slight amendments to the EU's proposal. But what the EU is not doing very, very clearly is going back on its suggestion that Northern Ireland would need to be part of the EU's customs territory and regulatory area. Now, that is the key problem that the UK has with this proposal. Northern Ireland being part of the EU customs territory would mean it would be future trade agreements with Great Britain would be done with Great Britain and not with Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland would be represented in trade negotiations by the EU. These are the government's real concerns, and these technical adjustments to the EU's backstop don't quite address that.
They don't at the moment, but there are some key days coming up. The Salzburg Summit is looming. How do you think that is going to be playing out, and who do you think has the upper hand, the EU or the UK, going into that?
So I think Prime Minister Theresa May has talked about the Salzburg Summit as a staging post in these negotiations, and I think that's a useful terminology. I wouldn't suggest that tomorrow's summit is going to be a big turning point, that the EU member states are going to drastically change the direction in which the Commission has been moving. But this is, of course, the first time that the EU 27 leaders sit around and discuss the government's Chequers proposal for the future UK-EU relations. So there is the possibility here of opening up sort of positive mood music, positive sounds towards what the future UK-EU relationship will be. As to who has the upper hand, I think received wisdom would suggest that the UK is in a weaker negotiating position at this point in time. But what's important to remember is that if no agreement can be reached, what we're heading towards is no deal. And that will be bad for both the EU and the UK, and certainly very bad for Northern Ireland, Ireland and the Irish border.
OK, Aarti, Shankar, policy analyst at the think tank Open Europe. Great to talk to you. Thanks for joining us on Euronews tonight.